The Canadian boreal forest stretched endlessly, blanketed in thick snow that reflected the last rays of the setting sun. Alex Carter sat behind the wheel of his research truck, the engine rumbling faintly as he scribbled notes in his weather journal. A seasoned wildlife researcher focused on elusive species, he had spent months tracking lynx activity in this frigid wilderness. The lynx were an enigma, solitary creatures by nature, yet today, Alex had witnessed something extraordinary. He had seen several of them moving together through his binoculars, not in random paths but in a loose, deliberate formation. It defied everything he knew about their behavior. The sight had filled him with a mix of scientific excitement and unease. As twilight deepened, the truck's engine sputtered and fell silent, sending a shiver of dread down Alex's spine. He twisted the key in the ignition, but all he heard was a hollow click. Panic fluttered at the edges of his mind. The nearest ranger station was over 50 miles away, and the temperature outside had already plummeted to -15 degrees Fahrenheit. Glancing at his dashboard, Alex grabbed his satellite phone, only to find its battery completely drained. "Fantastic," he muttered, his breath visible in the icy air. He leaned back, weighing his options, when movement caught his eye in the rearview mirror. A shadow glided silently across the snow, too large to be a fox. His heart skipped as he reached for his binoculars. Emerging from the tree line was a lynx, its silver-gray coat blending seamlessly with the snowy backdrop. It stopped at the edge of the clearing, its amber eyes locking onto Alex's truck. Before he could process the sight, another shape appeared. Then another. One by one, more lynx stepped into view, their sleek forms moving with eerie precision. Alex's stomach tightened. Lynx didn't travel in groups. Yet here they were, encircling the truck like silent sentinels. A gust of wind howled through the forest, scattering loose snow and deepening the sense of isolation. Alex's instincts screamed at him to stay alert. Something wasn't right. The lynx weren't just wandering. They were watching. Waiting. Hi everyone, welcome to our channel. Today, I'm excited to share a new story with you. Please subscribe us. Alex tightened his grip on his binoculars, scanning the encroaching lynx. Their movements were deliberate, synchronized in a way that defied explanation. He counted 8 of them, no, 9, as another shadow emerged from the dense forest. The lead lynx, a massive male with a scar running down its left flank, stood a few paces ahead of the others. Its amber eyes glowed faintly in the fading light, unblinking and fixed on him. Alex's breath quickened as he reached for his thermal imaging scope. Adjusting the lens, he saw the unmistakable heat signatures of more lynx moving just beyond the tree line. There had to be at least 15 of them now, their sleek forms stark against the freezing backdrop. This wasn't a coincidence. It couldn't be. The forest had gone unnervingly silent. The usual chatter of birds and the rustle of small creatures in the underbrush were conspicuously absent. Even the wind seemed to have quieted, as if the entire wilderness was holding its breath. Through the scope, Alex noticed subtle signals among the lynx, flicks of their tails, tilts of their heads, minute shifts in their stances. They were communicating, but not with growls or snarls. Their coordination was unnervingly precise, as though guided by some unspoken understanding. His scientific curiosity wrestled with growing fear. He grabbed his camera, the shutter clicking softly as he captured the surreal scene. He zoomed in on the scarred male, its head tilting slightly as though aware it was being studied. Suddenly, the lead lynx took a step forward. The others mirrored its movement, tightening the circle around the truck. Alex's pulse raced. He fumbled for his flare gun, his hands trembling as he loaded the first flare. With a sharp pop, the flare streaked into the sky, its red light casting eerie shadows over the snowy clearing. The lynx didn't flinch. They didn't scatter. Instead, they paused, their amber eyes reflecting the crimson glow like tiny embers. "What are you doing?" Alex whispered, more to himself than to the animals. The lead lynx lifted a paw and tapped the ground twice, the sound barely audible over the faint whistle of the wind. The motion was deliberate, almost calculated. Alex's chest tightened as he realized the other lynx were repositioning, responding to the leader's silent command. He fired another flare, hoping to startle them into retreat. This one burst higher, brighter, but the result was the same. The lynx remained unmoved, their focus unwavering. Then, the wind picked up, carrying with it the first flakes of snow from an approaching storm. Alex glanced upward, his stomach sinking. The clouds were thick and fast-moving, signaling a blizzard was imminent. The scarred male lynx took another step closer, its head turning slightly toward the east. Alex followed its gaze and saw a narrow opening in the tree line, a path he hadn't noticed before. The lynx tapped the ground again, this time more forcefully. Alex stared, torn between logic and instinct. Was it showing him something? The storm was closing in fast now, the wind howling louder and snow falling in thick sheets. The lynx began to move, their formation shifting fluidly as they turned toward the gap in the trees. The scarred male glanced back at Alex, its gaze intense and unmistakable. It wanted him to follow. The wind roared as the first tendrils of the blizzard wrapped around Alex's truck, rattling the windows and reducing visibility to a swirling haze of white. Snow piled quickly against the tires, burying the once clear tracks that had brought him here. The temperature gauge on the dashboard had plummeted, and Alex could feel the cold biting through the truck's thin insulation. His gaze flicked between the scarred lynx and the gap in the trees it seemed to be directing him toward. Every logical thought screamed at him to stay put, wait out the storm in the relative safety of the truck. But then the lynx stepped forward, its movements slow and deliberate, before stopping and turning its head back to him. The message was clear: follow me. Alex's survival instincts won out over his skepticism. Grabbing his pack and flare gun, he pulled on his heavy coat and scarf, bracing himself as he opened the door to the icy gale. The cold hit him like a wall, cutting through his layers as he stepped out into the storm. The lynx didn't retreat. It waited. The others fell into formation as Alex followed the scarred leader toward the trees. They moved like shadows, their sleek forms gliding effortlessly through the snow, even as Alex stumbled over buried roots and drifts that reached his knees. His boots crunched loudly in the silence, while the lynx moved soundlessly, their amber eyes glowing faintly through the snowstorm. As they entered the tree line, the forest seemed to swallow them. The snow was thinner under the canopy, but the darkness was suffocating. Alex kept his flashlight trained on the scarred lynx, whose pace never faltered. The others flanked him, keeping a protective distance as if forming an invisible barrier between him and the dangers of the storm. Then, the leader stopped abruptly. Alex froze, squinting into the dim light of his flashlight. Ahead, the lynx pawed at the snow, revealing a narrow fissure in the ground. It was an entrance to a cave, the opening just wide enough for a man to crawl through. Warm air wafted out, carrying with it the faint, musky scent of earth and stone. The scarred lynx looked back at Alex one last time before slipping into the cave. One by one, the others followed, their tails vanishing into the shadows. Alex hesitated, his flashlight beam flickering as his hands trembled. Was this a trap? Or salvation? The howling wind made the decision for him. The storm was intensifying, and staying outside was a death sentence. Swallowing his fear, Alex crouched and crawled through the opening. Inside, the cave was larger than it appeared. The flickering beam of his flashlight revealed rough stone walls and a flat, dry floor. At the center of the cavern, the lynx had gathered, their bodies huddled together in a loose circle. They were calm, their eyes fixed on Alex as if awaiting his next move. He took a cautious step closer, his boots scuffing against the stone. That's when he noticed something extraordinary: the lynx had brought food. Small carcasses, hares and birds, were piled neatly near the center of the cave. It wasn't just for them. It was for him. Alex's breath caught in his throat. These animals, these predators, weren't just tolerating his presence. They were helping him survive. Before he could fully process the moment, a distant growl echoed through the cave. The lynx bristled, their ears swiveling toward the sound. Alex turned, heart pounding, as two yellow eyes glinted in the darkness near the entrance. A wolf. The scarred lynx moved first, stepping in front of Alex and lowering its body in a defensive stance. The others followed, forming a line between Alex and the predator. The wolf hesitated, its lips curling in a snarl, but it didn't dare advance. Outnumbered and outmatched, it backed away into the storm. Alex exhaled a shaky breath, his legs nearly giving out beneath him. The lynx returned to their spots, calm as ever, as if nothing had happened. He sat down against the cave wall, his back pressed to the cool stone. The scarred lynx approached, settling a few feet away. For a long moment, their eyes met, and in that silent exchange, Alex felt something he couldn't explain: understanding, trust, and a bond that transcended species. The storm raged outside, the wind howling like a living beast. Snow seeped through the cave's entrance, but the interior remained a sanctuary of eerie calm. Alex sat motionless, his body pressed against the stone wall as the pack of lynx rested around him, their forms blending into the shadows. The scarred leader sat closest, its amber eyes fixed on the cave entrance as if on guard. The other lynx alternated between resting and watching Alex, their behavior strangely composed. Alex pulled out his camera with trembling hands, aiming it at the group. The lens captured every detail, their sleek coats shimmering in the dim light, their unblinking gazes, and the protective formation they instinctively maintained. His camera's shutter sounded deafeningly loud, but the lynx didn't react. Instead, they seemed to accept his presence as though he had become part of their circle. For hours, the storm raged on, snow and ice battering the wilderness outside. Alex could hear faint snaps of branches and the occasional distant roar of the wind carving through the trees. When the storm finally began to ease, Alex noticed the first signs of movement among the lynx. One by one, they rose, their bodies stretching gracefully before turning their attention back to the cave entrance. The scarred lynx approached Alex, pausing just a few feet away. Alex stared, unsure of what to do. Slowly, it raised a paw, tapping the ground twice, just as it had before. The meaning was unmistakable: it's time to leave. He pushed himself to his feet, his muscles stiff from the cold and inactivity. The lynx began to move, slipping silently out of the cave. The scarred leader lingered, its amber eyes locking with Alex's one final time. Then, with a flick of its tail, it led the way into the fading storm. The sun was just beginning to rise as Alex followed the lynx back through the forest. The storm had left behind a pristine, untouched landscape, the snow sparkling under the pale morning light. The pack moved in perfect formation, their steps careful and deliberate. When they reached the edge of the clearing, Alex's truck came into view, half buried in snow. The lynx stopped, their leader turning to face Alex one last time. Its amber eyes met his, and in that moment, Alex felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude and awe. The scarred lynx held his gaze for a moment longer before turning and vanishing into the trees. The others followed, their sleek forms disappearing into the shadows of the forest. Alex stood there, the silence of the wilderness pressing in around him. His camera, filled with images of the night's events, felt heavier than ever. He knew what he had witnessed wasn't just an anomaly, it was something extraordinary, a glimpse into the